This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is all about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. And of course, we need a winner because we are competitive a little. And so we recruit our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang, to be our adjudicator. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean.
Now, Adam, do you think that your adjudications this week are going to be as arbitrary as the last few weeks?
Arbitrary is a good word.
Arbitrary is a very good word.
Well, can I say that we have been overwhelmed by feedback about our weekend edition in the last couple of weeks. And the vast majority agrees that I have been robbed a couple of weeks in a row.
Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Thompson, Brother Thompson.
It's not important who the feedback has come from, but the important thing is that it's arrived and that I think we are all united in hoping for a fairer decision this week.
Fair's in the ear of the beholder.
Actually, fair is in the eye of the adjudicator.
All right,
I'll accept that.
Let the sucking up commence. Let's get into it with the biggest story of the week. Sean, what was it for you?
Oh, I hate to say it, but once again, the biggest story of the week was financial markets and, of course, interest rates. Remember, Adam, this competition is about the biggest story of the week, even if it seems to be a bit of Groundhog Day going on. Let's start in equities. It was the rebound week where the ASX put on about $120 billion in just 2 sessions. It came back a bit later in the week. But for all those shareholders out there holding bank stocks, including most of us with super funds, what a good week. The market's still down around 10% since its April high, but it's up about 5% or so this week. Why? Well, locally, the Reserve Bank decided to lift interest rates by 25 basis points, not 50 basis points, as most people expected. And in the US, there's been a run of data suggesting rates won't have to move quite as much as previously anticipated. So people think, maybe rates won't go as high as we thought. Therefore, earnings particularly will be little stronger. One set of stocks gaining ground this week were the energy companies, Woodside and Santos, and the coal companies, Whitehaven and New Hope. Both those latter hit record highs. Part of the reason is because of oil prices. They're on the rise again after OPEC, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, ignored the pleas of the US and decided to cut production by 2 million barrels of oil a day. That's massive. That's 2% of global production a day. Then, moving to currency markets, the Aussie dollar fell after the Reserve Bank decided to lift rates by just 25 basis points. I'd hate to be going to the USA anytime soon. A little self-interest here. Bond prices surged on the back of a revised expectation of interest rates. Just a massive week for rates and markets.
Oh, that is a big week, big story.
I'm exhausted talking about it.
Yeah, and look, it's been a very big week on markets, but I am going to go in a slightly different direction and proudly assume the status of underdog for this category. For me, the big story this week is all about property, and to quote Sean, Adam, remember, this competition is all about the biggest story of the week, even if it seems to be a bit of Groundhog Day going on. So I know you said that 90 seconds ago, but it also applies to me because this is a story that's been going on and on and on for weeks now. But this week, we finally got a clearer idea of what's happening with interest rates and maybe what that's going to mean for property prices moving ahead. Because up until now, we've had a series of supersized rate increases. But this week, as Sean mentioned, the board of the Reserve Bank went a little bit smaller with a 25 basis point hike. So economists think now that the cash rate will peak around 3%. It's currently at 2.65%. So it means for homeowners, and again, this is self-interest, but not just Sean's self-interest on this occasion. Adam, this is everyone's self-interest if you happen to have a home loan.
Do you know how big Adam's mortgage is by any chance? Is that why we're using $750,000 as the typical? I'm just wondering.
I wouldn't care to speculate, but you know what? I know that Adam, like me, is a bit of an everyman, and he thinks about the broader public. And so if you have a $750,000 variable rate mortgage, this cycle of rate rises will end up adding about $1,200 per month to your repayments. So no wonder property prices have taken a hit. And this week, Adam, we saw more evidence of this. House prices across capital cities fell by 1.4% in September, the 5th drop in a row. You have to go back 40 years to find a decline as steep as this. The national average capital city price is down around 5%. The big question, obviously, is how far is it going to go? Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe says 10% sounds about right. Others are a bit more pessimistic, a lot more pessimistic in some cases, up to 20%. More news this week as well about tumbling sentiment in the sector. Every day there is more data, and Adam, I know you love your data, but it all says the same thing. We haven't hit the bottom yet. And with auction volumes this weekend down around 30% year on year, there is still a bit of fear in the market.
Oh, nice use of fear.
Yeah, I was thinking about also tossing in a greed as well, but I just thought it's a little bit much. But
bargain hunters are getting greedy.
Yes, they are indeed. So,
sorry, I don't want to add to your story, Adam.
No, that's okay. You don't need to. It's perfect. Adam, what have you got?
Both great stories, well told. Both of them involved RBA Governor Phil Lowe. And this week, it seems he's moved from villain to hero. A lot of people are starting to give him credit for the decision this week, which has been really interesting. And so, Sean, your story is obviously the international context around interest rates and financial markets around the world. By scale, it is the biggest story and remarkable for all those elements of volatility that you spoke of. Michael, in terms of property prices, because the record, I'm going to give this one to you, the record price drop in property, and it's still got so much implication to so many people who invest and even rent and buy across Australia. I think property this week just wins it.
Adam, like Phil Lowe and the Reserve Bank, you too have moved from villain to hero with that decision.
That wasn't my aim.
But wear it, own it. Most remarkable story. That's a good decision, by the way. Most remarkable this week. Shall I go first on this one, Sean?
Sure.
Okay. One of our favourite topics on fear and greed is Elon Musk. And this has been a big week for Elon Musk. So I'm kind of gathering a few Musk stories together and kind of grouping them together as the most remarkable. So I'm going to start with the biggest Elon Musk story of the week and the Twitter deal that might well be back on now. He has revived his bid to buy the social media group for the original price of $44 billion US. It's really an about face for him. He's been trying to back out of the contract to buy Twitter for a while now. Very critical of management, very critical of the value of the platform, very critical of the percentage of users that are actually bots. It's a fairly significant change of heart. It might well help to end a courtroom fight over the acquisition too. So that's one big event this week. The next big event was the information we learned this week about Tesla's ongoing struggle to get cars to customers. We had almost 344,000 Teslas delivered worldwide in the last 3 months, which is a record quarter. So it's still not too bad, but it was down on what analysts expected. The hardest part apparently is actually physically transporting the vehicles at a reasonable price, which leads me neatly into the third part of this story about Elon Musk's big week, which is actually probably a part that he doesn't really know about at this stage because he probably doesn't pay too much attention to the demand in Australia at this stage. But the demand for electric vehicles is growing here. And this week, we learned that the Tesla Model Y was the third largest selling car behind the Toyota Hilux and the Ford Ranger Ute last month. Demand is growing. Now all we need is Elon Musk to fix his supply problems and buy Twitter, and he'll be very happy.
I think that's remarkable. You've gone from Elon Musk buying Twitter through to car sales in Australia.
It's
I actually think that's a remarkable telling of the story.
Yeah, well, I figure that I've learnt over the last few weeks, in order to beat you, I have to either just group a whole bunch of different stories together and find a common thread. It's more than just finding one good story. I'm going to have to find a bunch of them in the hope that something in one of them appeals to Adam.
What I find is the best option is to just find something quite obscure, preferably data-driven, something to do with a spreadsheet, and throw that in. That's actually the best way. Now, having said that, my most remarkable story this week has nothing to do with, it's probably got everything to do with spreadsheets, but not really. It's got an international flavour as well. It's about how some of the biggest companies in the world are changing strategies because of the potential recession in Europe and the US, and maybe Australia, though probably not. Some of these companies look to be panicking just a little bit. Nike's share price tumbled this week after it revealed it had to adopt a massive discounting strategy to get rid of all this stock it had built up. It's lost money because it sells outside the US. So it sells something in Perth, for example. By the time the earnings from that shoe makes its way back to headquarters in the US, in US dollars, it's worth a lot less because of the appreciation of the greenback. So Nike's had to discount. It's always discounted to some extent, but nothing like it's been doing recently. Meta, the owner of Facebook, has for the first time in the company's 18-year history started sacking people. Founder Mark Zuckerberg has pretty much called an end to the rapid growth of the social media giant. That in itself, that Zuckerberg is saying it's the end of the growth phase of Facebook, is remarkable enough to win this category, I'd just like to say. In fact, Meta will be smaller next year than this year. Another example this week is the world's biggest shipping company, Maersk. It's decided to slow the speed of its vessels that float around the world to save on fuel, given soaring energy costs. Tough times are coming. Some of the world's biggest companies are making some remarkable decisions to prepare. Adam.
Both really good stories again. The spectacle of Elon Musk. I'm sorry, Michael, but you lose this one because of the scale of the disruption being experienced by massive global companies in this economic environment of fear and greed. Sean wins this one.
Okay. No, that's that actually makes perfect sense. I thought as soon as when Sean said that line about that Facebook sacking people was enough to win the story on its own, I'm like, oh, you're probably right. I don't reckon I've got a chance on this one.
You know, the funny thing so far in these two rounds, the biggest story of the week, I actually thought mine was better, went to Michael. The most remarkable, I thought, actually, Michael's better, went to me. Who knows?
It's the thrill. It's the mystery of it all.
It is the mystery of it all. I totally agree.
A lucky dip. All right. Yeah. We'll come back in a moment and see if we can find a sleeper story of the week. All right, Sean, we are looking now for the sleeper story of the week. So maybe a story that's not getting the attention that it deserves, or you think is going to become a bigger story further down the track. What was it for you?
Well, to be honest, this is more of a waking up story rather than a sleeper story. Oh. Ever since the previous government passed legislation providing for big tax cuts for middle-income earners, that's us guys, supported by the then opposition, people have expected to get more money in their pockets from 1 July 2024. Take a tip from me, it ain't going to happen. Certainly not as large as has been proposed, or actually as is legislated. And the Albanese government is preparing the way for the winding back of the so-called Stage 3 tax cuts. The Stage 3 tax cuts will introduce a flat 30% rate for anyone earning between $45,000 and $200,000. That costs the budget $20 billion, which of course goes back into our pockets. But Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers this week started inching his way towards a backflip. I'm not sure how you inch your way towards a backflip, because you wouldn't want to be inching when you're trying to do the backflip, because then you'd be in all sorts of trouble. However, pushing his way towards a backflip in the upcoming federal budget. We all want tax cuts. No one's arguing that. But the problem is Australia has a stack of debt. We have to repay it. Remember that. And putting more money into people's pockets when inflation is rampant isn't necessarily a good idea. Yesterday, Friday, Dr. Chalmers revealed cost blowouts facing the government. Yet another inching, shall we say, in the plan to repeal the legislation. It hasn't happened yet, but I reckon it will. A great sleeper story. Michael.
Oh, just the image of the Treasurer inching his way towards a very slow backflip.
A slow motion backflip.
It could be very painful because a backflip must be performed at high speed to be successful.
It might not end up well. Sorry.
No, that's a great story. I love it. And you sold it so well.
Thank you.
Actually sold it better than the story itself is. So, my story, Adam, has been chosen for a few reasons. Number one, it is a great sleeper story. Anyone will be able to tell you that. I'm sure you'll agree. Number two, it is all about wine. And I know that you're a bit of a connoisseur when it comes to wine.
Hold on. Can I jump in here? I thought Adam was a cider connoisseur.
Oh, no. No.
Can't you be both?
He starts with a cider and then he moves on to the wine.
Ah, right. I do remember one story you told, Michael, of Adam in his radio days and the 3-cider Adam Lang. It's quite different from the 1-cider Adam Lang.
Yeah, it's always the best. It was always the best time to ask him for approval on something. Yeah, the three-sider, Adam. Now,
We digress.
we do. We certainly do. Because this week, and this is why this is a sleeper story, we heard that almost half of all consumers are apparently looking for more kind of health-conscious options when it comes to wine, which is why Treasury Wine Estates, which is the owner of Penfolds and a bunch of other brands, is accelerating its push into low alcohol or no alcohol options. Why is this a sleeper story? I hear you asking, Sean, because you tend to criticize most things that I do. Because up until now, the rise in low and no alcohol beer and wine has largely been happening on the fringes, and that is changing. Treasury is going to invest heavily in the sector, using technology to replicate the features of an alcoholic wine without the side effects like kind of karaoke and nudity and a headache.
Hold on.
Thompson family weekend.
That's right.
I mean, not speaking from personal experience. But
Yeah, I have this friend who told me.
yeah, I've read about it. Anyway, I doubt we're going to see a non-alcoholic Grange anytime soon, but we are certainly going to see more shelf space given over to a whole new variety and range of beer, wine and spirits. Treasury's announcement this week, which didn't get a huge amount of attention, is going to make this mainstream, and that's why it is a great sleeper story. Adam, do you agree?
No.
Jesus.
Oh, that's a bit blunt.
Emphatic no. It's a good story.
Is this because of the three-sider Adam remark at the start?
No.
Because that was Sean.
Actually, that was pretty funny. But
That was me then.
Michael, I talked about tax. Keep this in mind.
Oh, of course.
now, you did miss like an obvious personal sway on that one, Michael. As you know, I'm a very keen flat taxer. And so this stage 3 tax cut coming through gets about 90% of the population paying the same rate of tax, which I think is one of the greatest forms of equity that we can all have. I think it's important. And so I hope you're wrong, Sean. I hope they don't do a backflip. But I do think they're going to work around the legislation to introduce something like a deficit levy because of the record deficit that we're on that'll be time-based. But we'll see what happens. I hope you're wrong, but you do win for Sleeper Story of the Week because it is a massive change.
At risk of totally blowing up any chance I have of winning today, do you really think a flat tax is equitable?
Yep.
Whoa. Let's talk about this off air.
Hey, can I just ask, won't somebody please think of the karaoke bars that are going to lose business with non-alcoholic wines?
And the nude people that won't get arrested.
That's
Well,
right.
there'll be less nudity, I think is the point.
Anyway, look, I accept your decision, Adam. And,
Okay.
we shall move on to the favourite story of the week. And
How about you go first this time?
okay, all right, I'll go first because, Adam, I know that you're going to be on board with this one because my favourite this week is just quite simply a big win for common sense, right? And I know you're a common sense kind of chap. The European Parliament has voted to force all mobile phones, cameras, tablets and the like to use a USB-C power connector by 2024, which is really not such a big issue for most devices because they already use it, but a little bit trickier for the world's most valuable company, Apple, because they use a lightning connection instead. Apple, during the whole process, argued that it would create waste and limit innovation, but they really kind of lost that one. And if they are forced to change the cable for iPhones in Europe, you'd think that they would just do the same for the rest of the world too. Apparently, though, it might not all be bad news for Apple because some analysts say it would actually potentially give them a sales bump because shoppers would just be encouraged to buy the latest products with USB-C rather than stick with their old gadgets. Either way, you can imagine how many kind of household arguments this is going to prevent and how that kind of nest of cables next to your bed or wherever you charge your devices is going to become a whole lot simpler, a whole lot cleaner. Adam, this is a win for simplicity, a win for minimalism, a win, as I said, for good old common sense, and I'm sure a win for Michael Thompson in this category.
You know, one thing I did think about this during the week, some of my kids are Apple kids and some are Android kids. And so one thing about having the different ports is that you have half the number of fights over who stole the phone charger because obviously the Apple kids aren't stealing the Android kids' phone chargers. Just
Isn't it funny that that's how your family could be split down the middle based on
Operating systems.
Yeah, indeed.
My favourite story, well, it's a no-brainer for me and the 331 million followers of Kim Kardashian on Instagram. KK has agreed to pay a $1.3 million fine to settle charges with the US securities regulator for promoting a cryptocurrency without actually saying she was paid to do so. Apparently, Ms. Kardashian did not disclose a $250,000 payment she received to post about a crypto security token called Ethereum Max on her Instagram account. So at the time, she had 224 million followers. She's pretty influential, Ms. Kardashian. She asked her followers, and I quote, "Are you guys into crypto? ? She uses 4, and then she drew attention to Ethereum Max, a new coin at the time. So many reasons why this is my favourite story. It's got KK in it, right? A first for Fear and Greed. Have we ever had Kim Kardashian on the show? In fact, Simone, a listener, during the week got in touch with me and said, great to see Kim Kardashian on Fear and Greed. I kid you not. Pretty cool. It's got hundreds of millions of Instagram followers in it. It's got cryptocurrencies. But perhaps most importantly, it tackles a very, very important issue. People without any skill or experience are giving financial advice, finfluencers. Why someone would buy a token because Kim Kardashian told them to do so is beyond me. The fact of the matter is this token lost 70% in value a week after she mentioned it. It flew for that week and then it lost 70% in value. Someone made a lot of money. Lots of people lost money. This whole finfluencer thing is a real problem. Hopefully this fine will ward off others from doing the same thing. The world of finance, Adam, is a safer place. That's why it's my favourite story.
Oh, did you know that we're on Instagram too, Sean?
I do know we're on Instagram. I've seen
I mean, we haven't got 224 million followers, but I mean, we're getting there.
That's right. We've got the first 224 of the 224 million.
Got to start somewhere. Pretty
That's
sure
right.
someone said something wise about that once. Adam, who won?
Michael, you win this one. I think Kim Kardashian as a business story is incredible. And keeping finfluencers held to account is a good thing. But in terms of the scale of this decision in Europe and the simplicity and the logic behind everyone adopting the same device or the same mechanic for charging, I think is just so impactful, even at the very basic level that it is. So, Michael, you win the favourite story of the week for me.
So is that 2-2 then?
2-2. It comes to the points, and it's a very, very close score. Michael, out of 100 points, 79. Not your greatest showing.
I reckon that you're becoming a tougher scorer.
On me. Only on me, though.
Well, actually, we haven't heard what I got yet. I could get under 79 here. So.
Sean,
yes,
out of 183 points. You're the victor today.
Okay, but I think you are getting tougher because we were going from 90, 95 points out of 100.
Yes, last week was a good week. High-quality competition.
Was it?
I'm with Michael on this.
Yeah. And just like that, Adam resumes his mantle as villain, having briefly been a hero to me.
Yeah, it's only ever temporary stepping out of that status, really, though, isn't it?
That's all right. You have a week until redemption, and I look forward to that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
It's a pleasure, genuinely.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Adam.
Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, of course, Twitter and Facebook. And don't forget to check out our new podcast as well, How Do They Afford That?, featuring Canna Campbell, the founder of Sugar Mama TV, all about making your money work a little bit harder for you. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.